everybody, and welcome in to another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. It is Thursday, January 15th, 2025. I'm your host, George Cord, joined by the one and only Cody Rocap. I can't even say my last name, but how are you doing?
You're just living in my life, man. I can't speak ever, so I understand. But I'm doing good. Thanks for asking.
I'm following the goat's footsteps, right?
That's right. I am the GOAT.
That's why I'm trying to grow the beard, too. It's not going to be as good as yours, but we're getting there.
When I'll shave mine off.
Making me chase it the whole way. Can't give me something.
And then we'll start back at ground zero.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, if you want to watch that and get even more than you do from the show here, follow us at the Couch GMs, Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok. You can always DM us with any questions you have any time during the week, or you can watch us live Mondays and Thursdays at 6:30 East on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Interact with us live here on the show. I know we didn't have a whole lot outside of reactions on Monday, but there's a lot of things that happened since, Cody, so let's see what's happening. First things first, Tuesday, after something that you and I kind of hinted at might happen, Mike Tomlin announced he is stepping away from his head coaching job with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Doesn't sound like he's interested in coaching again, but man, I know he's gotten some interest. So what do you think is going to happen?
I don't think he's going to coach this year. This feels very much like the Sean Payton end in New Orleans. Obviously, Tomlin was there longer, but take a year off, regroup. I don't think there's a lot of great jobs out there. And I think you're kind of seeing that in the market as well. And we'll talk about some of those potential hirings and offensive coordinators, like even like Mike McDaniel. Schefter put out today, he might rather take a really good OC job than a bad head coaching job. And I think Tomlin's going to, play his options out. But the big thing here to take away is that the Steelers retain his rights. So because he wasn't fired, he stepped down. If he wants to come back in 2026 or maybe take 2 years off, come back in 2027, he'll either revert back to the Pittsburgh, which won't happen because they'll have a guy in place, but they'll have to work out some sort of compensation to get Tomlin on the new team.
Yeah, the nice thing that happens with this is that Pittsburgh's still retaining the rights. You could end up seeing a coaching trade happen. He said he isn't interested in coaching for the foreseeable future, basically, but that doesn't mean he's not going to step back in. And I didn't know this before they were talking about it on Monday Night Football, but apparently he's got a couple different media contracts potentially lined up as well. So expect to see him on your TV somewhere next year. We just don't know where.
My first thought would go to CBS replace Matt Ryan, but then I didn't know if Bill Cowher and Mike Tomlin is too much Steelers head coach on one set. So
yeah, but they are going to be looking for someone to replace Matt Ryan, because I don't think we mentioned this, but he took a job as a president of the Atlanta Falcons, which is a pretty cool gig for him coming off of his career there. And
no, I think he'll do well at that. And I'm interested to see which head coach he brings in.
Yes, that'll be interesting to see how the Falcons move on. Moving on to, we didn't talk a lot of offensive coordinators. You and me have mentioned pre-show, like Cliff Kingsbury was released from Washington. They are looking for somebody, but the big one in the news seems to be the Eagles firing offensive coordinator Kevin Patullo, which was another thing that was expected after that offense did nothing but sputter most of the second half of the season. And I know you and I can have a little debate here, but it's like, was he just a scapegoat, or was he really the problem here?
Yeah, and then real quick, just to clarify, I'm pretty sure Washington already promoted David Blau. Remember that name? To OC.
Wow. Okay.
That's why the whole Cliff Kingsbury thing went like so, and like it was almost like he let go and they put this guy in place. Kind of, it was a weird thing. But back to Kevin Patullo, or Patullo, excuse me. No C in that word. Yeah, he definitely was the scapegoat, but it continues the trend of, almost every year, not quite, of getting a new play caller for Jalen Hurts. This offense should have performed a lot better with the pieces around it. Obviously, everyone expected some sort of step back from Saquon Barkley because it was such a high last year. I don't think anybody thought it would be, outside of injury, as poor as it was, or as poor as it felt. Because I know he still had some decent yards and stuff like that, but it just never felt in rhythm. Obviously, Lane Johnson's injury played a big part of the run game for sure too, but every team is dealing with injuries. The A.J. Brown thing is still confusing to this day. Even in Howie Roseman's post-season press conference, he's like, he's a great player. We want to have great players on our team. I'd get a guy like that. And it's like the fan perception and the front office perception, it feels like the fans are done, ready, just like that kid was ready to get rid of Kevin Patullo. He's ready to get rid of A.J. Brown. It sounds like the front office might not be. Maybe that's them just playing their cards close and trying to drive up the value. But with Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert had a really good year. Like, their offensive struggles were definitely on notice, and somebody had to go.
Yeah, and I think that person was not going to be Nick Sirianni, even though, like, going into last year, and they're like, if he doesn't do something good, he's going to be gone, and then he goes and wins the Super Bowl. I think that at least locked him up for a year or two, but I wouldn't be shocked if we have treatment similar to Doug Peterson. If this keeps going downhill, I don't think his job security is going to be there long term. But it sounded to me in their press conference that he was kind of being the yes man, and he was willing to basically give up all control of the offense if they get the right offensive coordinator to keep his job. That's almost what it sounded like to me. And obviously we're not on the inside. We don't know. But like, who could some of those offensive coordinator options be? Mike McDaniel was one of the people on that list. And that it could be a job where he would take a job in Philly instead of going somewhere he doesn't want to coach for a head coaching job. Brian Daboll was one of the options as well. And that would actually be a play caller that Jalen Hurts has had in the past. He was a play caller for Jalen Hurts in Alabama for 1 year. So not that it's like exactly a repeat play caller because it's been how many years. It's to be somebody he's at least familiar with. So that seems like the seamless fit.
Yeah, I think Daboll makes the most sense. I don't think Mike McDaniel ends up there. I know there's a lot of good pieces. I just don't know if his offense works with those skill players. I mean, I think he could, but he comes from that like McVay, Shanahan, probably more of the Shanahan tree, which I think he would. And again, I don't want it. I think a quarterback like Jared Goff that is a lot more like in rhythm, hit your back foot and throw it, which that's not Jalen Hurts' strong suit. I think he would like that's why he was so successful with Tua. Like when Tua was healthy, was because it was like Tua's extremely accurate. 3-step drop, the ball's out. Like I think a Jared Goff would make a lot more sense to them. But I like the Daboll one a lot. And I'm not going to go through the list of offensive coordinators because at the end of the day, it might end up being like Zach Robinson or Arthur Smith or just someone that has play calling experience, someone we haven't even heard of, or
that quarterback coach dude from the Rams who's getting head coaching interviews for some reason.
Yeah, so maybe he jumps over to offensive play caller for a year or something like that.
Yeah.
But I think the interesting point that you brought up though was the fact that it sounds like, and again, we're not on the inside, that Nick Sirianni is going to basically hand over the reins to the offensive coordinator, similar to what we saw with Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson after they figured it out.
Yep.
However, I think Lions fans would die for Dan Campbell.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously not seriously, but like they love that man. I don't think Philly fans like Nick Sirianni. So like if your offense is really good next year and he's like, oh, go run the offense, I'm just going to be here. And it's like, do we want to lose him again and reset the cycle or lose Nick Sirianni? I think that's a fascinating question to see how it plays out in 2026-7.
Oh, that's 100% true. And something that has been going around the Philly media is like, you get Daboll. He does extremely well. You saw Vic Fangio on the other side of the ball. Sirianni's just sitting there. Daboll's going to go get a head coaching job. Why would you not promote Daboll and drop Sirianni in that case? And I mean, that is a firestorm of emotions and, politics that would, really be an issue. But there's definitely something behind it where it's like, if your head coach isn't controlling either side of the ball and you can get something similar out of your offensive coordinator being the head coach, you have to make that argument. And I think that's just partly because we live in the era of the, offensive play callers. You're most likely your head coach, or you have those really strong defensive coordinator head coaches too, but the CEO head coach isn't really a thing anymore. or at least their CEO head coaches seem to typically be majorly involved on one side of the ball. They're just not calling the plays. And I think that's what we've seen so far, where it's been Sirianni's offense so far with someone else calling the plays. And I don't think we really knew for a fact that was the case, but I think we've heard now recently that has been the case. So if you can have somebody else come in and run an offense more efficiently than Sirianni, then you can argue what's his value.
Yeah, and I think some of that stuff too, like, it's the same system. It's obviously not the same system for each play caller. They each bring their own. It might be it might be like, honestly, like it might be like the West Coast offense, right? I'm not saying that's what it is because it's not, but 3 different coaches run. It's the same thing with like LaFleur, McVay, Shanahan. They all run the same system, but their all offenses also look extremely different. So like, I think there is some of like a lot of getting carried with that, whose system is it? Who's making it? I mean, because Kellen Moore took, he brought over his system from Dallas and from the Chargers, worked with Nick Sirianni, made it work really well, won a Super Bowl, got a head coaching job. And then once his system got implemented, the Saints started to look like a competent offense. You saw the resurgence of Chris Olave. So I think Sirianni has a role for sure. But I think because you've seen the trend of some of the offensive callers like really unlock it, it questions like how much of a role for me, even if they're saying, yeah, it's the same system, it's Nick's system.
So before we jump off this one, I think I have to also ask you the other question that's been rolling around. And it's like, is the limitation here Jalen Hurts, or do you think it is an offensive play caller / system limitation?
So I don't think there's an answer to that. And that's probably not what you want to hear. Because I think it's the job of the play caller to get the most out of your quarterback. And I think my answer kind of goes to what I said. I don't know if Jalen Hurts fits best with a Mike McDaniel offense because he's not the guy that I want to hit the back foot and just throw the ball. Like he's an RPO guy. He's, push the ball downfield, hit your tight end hook routes or run. Like, and I'm oversimplifying it for a podcast. Like I get that he does a lot more. And I still do think Jalen Hurts has some football limitations on the field. Does that mean he can't be good? No. I mean, I think there's been some quarterbacks that are great that had limitations on the field. I think Brock Purdy has some limitations, but I think him and Kyle Shanahan they work so well together. Like that would be a fascinating one. If it wasn't for Shanahan and Purdy, how does that look? And I think you could say that with about a lot of quarterbacks once they find their quote unquote offensive coordinator. We're talking a lot about Kevin Patullo, but the same reason the Chargers let go of Greg Roman in Los Angeles is like, what happened to 4,000 yard Justin Herbert? Like, where has that been since Roman had taken over? Like it's been gone. We got to find someone else. Mike McDaniel might be great with the Chargers too. And that would be one where he would have full control. So to answer your question, I think it's up to the play caller. You got to find a good pairing. And I think the offensive scheme, depends a lot on the quarterback and their pairing, which is another reason why I think Daboll makes a ton of sense. Like young Josh Allen was a guy that pushed the ball down the field and ran. And they're not the same running style, so I don't want to compare them 1-to-1, but I think his offense, you even saw it with Jaxson Dart, like getting quarterbacks on the moves, the play action, the RPOs. Like I think that would be a good fit for him. But if you really want to run the RPOs, bring back Chip Kelly. That'd be fun.
Oh gosh, no. Chip Kelly's apparently running plays that he doesn't even install in practice. I heard, I don't know, whatever Vegas was saying this year, but no, I think you really got the gears moving there. And it's interesting when you talked about just tying back to Herbert, like we, probably laid it into Herbert maybe a little too thick on Monday. Sure. But the Greg Roman thing does have some clout because you got to think when Greg Roman was getting his wheels going in the NFL, he was working with Lamar. Lamar runs a much different kind of offense and a much different type of quarterback than Herbert is. You bring him in there with Jim Harbaugh, they're obviously focusing on running the ball, which is why he was there with Jim Harbaugh. But it probably didn't fit Justin Herbert too well. And we hear about all the McVay Shanahan offense, and that was what took the league by storm over the last few years. And that's why that's like this is the best way to run offense, but not necessarily. Because like you did say, Dayball working with Josh Allen was very effective. We have Greg Roman, who I think if you put him in the right system might work well. Todd Monken's another one. We saw what Todd Monken was able to do with Lamar Jackson, maybe not this year, but last year when he was still up there for MVP, he was able to use his rushing ability, but we saw Lamar progress a lot as a passer. So I think that that's like the other tree of the way you can run an effective offense in the NFL that maybe not isn't as pretty or doesn't have the pretty names attached to it, but that the Eagles are going to have to find in this whole system.
Yeah, and just like I said, I think it's really just about the pairing of the offensive coordinator to the quarterback. And I'll go back to Kyle Shanahan. Everyone's given all the praise for how well he has held that team together. This is the same guy that convinced the Commanders to draft Kirk Cousins in the 4th round after taking RG3 because he thought Kirk Cousins was going to fit his offense better. He was a big reason why they drafted Brock Purdy. And when they traded up to number 3 and get 3 first-round picks, it seems pretty obvious he wanted Mac Jones, not Trey Lance. But Trey Lance had the intangibles, and where Mac Jones was like the guy that's just going to run his system well. And hindsight's 2020. Maybe if the injuries didn't happen, maybe Trey Lance, does have a decent career. But bring that around to this year when Brock Purdy goes out for 6 weeks and he finally gets his chance with Mac Jones. Mac Jones looks the best he's ever had. So that's why I think the pairing means so much. And not to, bring this back to the Packers, but I think that's one of the big reasons for, because there's this whole debate all week that we still don't know the answer. Are we going to keep LaFleur? Are we not? It sounds like they're working to a contract extension, but we don't know what that is. But his pair with Jordan Love, the growth that you've seen, him ascending to a top 10 quarterback, in some statistical categories, top 5, it's like, do you want to break that up and basically have him start over too? So I think that plays a big factor into it. I did not expect to spend 10 minutes talking about Kevin Patullo and the Eagles.
No, but I think it was good we were able to kind of bring other team perspective in and talk about some other guys. I like being able to talk offensive scheme at least a little bit. So I was cool with that conversation. And I think we can tie it into our next piece of news, which was obviously the big news of the week so far, with the Giants not letting Harbaugh leave the building per se and go to his other interviews. And they do sign him to be their next head coach. And as somebody who worked with Lamar for so long, being able to input him and whoever he can bring with him for offensive coordinator with Jaxson Dart seems like a very good move, which is why I absolutely hate it.
Yeah, well, one, I think it's funny that we talked about a couple minutes ago, like the CEO head coach not working great, and that's exactly what Harbaugh is, and he got 5 years, $100 million, so about $20 million a year to be the head coach, which is insane for that. And maybe you don't like it, but before we break it down, I'll give you a reason to like it. In the history of the NFL, we are about to hit Super Bowl 59.
Mm-hmm.
There has never been a head coach to win a Super Bowl with 2 different teams. So there's been guys that have gotten back. Andy Reid being the guy that didn't win one in Philly, got back, won one. Mike Holmgren, Dick Vermeil. There's one other name, Bill Parcells. I think he went to 3 with 3 different teams. So people, they've just never won multiple times. So you might have to see the Giants in the Super Bowl again, but as long as Harbaugh's there, history says they're not winning. So rest easy on that. And it sounds like everything you mentioned who they're going to bring. It sounds like everything is pointing to Todd Monken is following him from the Baltimore Ravens, which I like Todd Monken. Obviously, there was some rift that happened between either Harbaugh, Monken, and Jackson over the last 18 months or so in Baltimore, but he was also there for a long time. Maybe it was time to move on with that situation for sure. But yeah, the Giants, it seems like a good pick. He was the guy that was the top of the class of the 9 spots, at least that were fired. There's some debate if like some of the coaches that are kind of on the hot seat, if they were going to be traded, where would they have fit in? But we're not going to have that conversation. But yeah, I think it's a good pairing. The Giants have a lot of young pieces. Like we've talked about this all off season, or not all off, but all season long. Like, yeah, they got hurt. They lost Scadaboo. They lost Malik Neighbors. Dart was in and out of the lineup. However, you have those three that I just mentioned, plus on the defensive side, you have Brian Burns, you have Abdul Carter, which had his issues as a rookie as well. You have Theo Johnson had a little bit of a breakout this year. Like there's a lot of good pieces there to get like the guy to like come in and right the ship. I think Harbaugh made a ton of sense in the Giants, and it does not surprise me they went so hard to get him.
Oh, I agree 100%. And that team does have plenty, like a very bright future with the talent they have in there and still having one more high end pick. And I think people are going to want to go there to play for Harbaugh after seeing all the success that he had in Baltimore. Not saying it's going to be an easy transition to just go up to New York and make that team good, but they have the ability to. I think it would make sense for them to bring Monken with. I think the big problem was because there was the rift with Harbaugh and Monken and Lamar Jackson, and then Ravens ownership. It sounded like was going to give Harbaugh a chance to stay if he was willing to part with Monken and maybe also their defensive coordinator, and he wanted to run back with both, which is the other reason why they're like, well, then you're all gone. So he was there a long time, but I still think this is a great signing for the Giants. I know you say their history says they're not going to get back to win another Super Bowl, but they're going to be a competitive team, I think, in a year or two if Harbaugh can right the ship the way he has been righting the ship in Baltimore for so long.
I did see on Twitter, I believe somebody said an anonymous AFC executive, so take that with whatever you want. But it was like, don't be surprised if the Giants are this year's version of the Patriots. Like Harbaugh comes in, it's a young team with some good pieces around, just really gets them on the right course. But you mentioned the Ravens ownership. Did you see the press conference that the dude did? And he was
How long would Harbaugh have been here if Loop hit the field goal? That one?
Yeah, and he was like, a week.
He had his mind decided, and they would have had to make a Super Bowl run for him to change it, which is crazy.
Yeah, which and I think like in that instance, like, cool, you knew it was over. They even talked about it like he actually got told over the phone because Harbaugh had already left, and he wasn't like he was like, I'm not gonna make you come back in. You know what that's gonna be, and which was an interesting. That whole conversation was an interesting perspective from an owner. So I'm really interested though to see who Baltimore brings in to replace Harbaugh. I think Brian Flores makes a ton of sense for them, but I just don't know if Flores is going to get a legitimate head coaching opportunity.
No, and if he doesn't, though, means he's still under contract with Minnesota as a DC.
No, his contract's up. So Minnesota wants him back, but he's already interviewed for the Commanders defensive coordinator. I believe he's going to interview for the Pittsburgh head coaching job. So he's at least going to take his options to weigh it out, which obviously puts Minnesota in a tough place because, like, I guess you could interview other guys, but you're going to be like, hey, we're going to take Brian Flores back. But if he goes somewhere, we want you. Like, how does that? So they might be in like at the end of this hiring cycle or have to figure out Brian Flores first.
Yeah, they might end up getting stuck like teams that make the Super Bowl and then lose their coordinators kind of deal, except they don't have the luxury of also being in the playoff run. So it's unfortunate for them. But I mean, I think Flores in Baltimore makes a lot of sense to me. Honestly, Flores in Pittsburgh makes sense to me too, trying to be able to revitalize that defense. And I mean, it seems like the kind of candidate that Pittsburgh would go for. But I think he is more likely going to take a defensive coordinator job somewhere, maybe even in one of these openings, under a new head coach. So interested to see where he's going to fall in. The thing is, it's like, I could tell you there's 15 potential head coaches for these spots. And like Harbaugh was a slam dunk that he was going to get one of the jobs, and there might be one or two others. Otherwise, it's like, is someone going to take a chance on one of these retreads, or are they going to be a high-end coordinator? And we really don't know. Like, I don't think there's any definitive, like, these 8 guys are the 8 guys are getting jobs.
Yeah, I was literally going to ask you who gets hired next, so I will still do that.
See, like, there's been interviews going around, but like, Harbaugh was the first domino to fall. And outside of that, I don't know if there's anybody that I've heard like having strong interest in another guy.
Yeah, I was going to say I don't really know which one is going to. I don't know if we'll get any answers for this week. I think we might go into the following week. Or I know I did see the Titans are finishing up interviews. I believe McCarthy is their last one on Saturday, and then they're going to roll into second interviews on starting Monday. So it sounds like the Titans aren't going to hire anyone until next week, unless they really fall in love with one of these last candidates and just want to move forward with. But it seems like they're going to wait. I do think the Matt LaFleur situation is a factor in this, because I do think teams like Miami or Atlanta, those would be the big two, maybe even like Las Vegas, if you wanted to throw them in there, would be willing to give up a second round pick to, for the head coach if the Packers can't work out a deal. So I think there could be some waiting on that situation. So if you told me when we do the podcast on Monday, we still don't have any new updates, I wouldn't be that surprised.
That's kind of how I think it's going to happen. And I mean, there's even some guys that are in games this weekend that are getting interviews. Like I mentioned, that Rams quarterback coach, I cannot think of his name on the top of my mind right now.
Which one? There's 3 getting.
That's true. I mean, not the offensive or defensive coordinator. Like there's also their quarterback's coach too. Like, there's 3 guys.
Delise or
yeah, it starts with an S. Schultze
or something like that.
That's it. Well, then we also have I'm also blanking on the name of the defensive coordinator for the 49ers.
Robert Saleh.
Yeah, I wanted to say Ryans. I'm like, no, Ryans is still with the Texans. Saleh. He's actually doing an interview late tonight with a team. So there's even a chance that those kind of dominoes fall if those teams get eliminated this week. But if they don't, then you're going to have those teams pushing back. Like you can't hire somebody off another team until after they're eliminated. There's a chance that those teams get to the Super Bowl and there's like 3 Rams coordinators or coaches that want to get hired. They're going to have to wait till all the way in February.
Yeah. I mean, at that point they would be basically in place. Like we knew Kellen Moore was going to the Saints. I guess it wasn't completely confirmed, but it seemed pretty obvious he was going to the Saints before the Super Bowl game. But so hopefully we get some clarity like that.
All right. I guess we can jump off of coaches really quick before we get out of this segment, though. Did you check out the new stadium renderings for the potential Commander Stadium that's coming in 2030?
Yeah, it looks great. It's a much needed upgrade. The location looks phenomenal. The stadium looks good. They did a really good job, in my opinion, of making the stadium feel unique. I feel like a lot of these stadiums, have a lot of similarities. Like if you see all the Chicago Bears renderings in Allegiant Stadium, they look identical. And it's like, guys, come on. Where this one, it definitely has some similarities. Like the roof kind of looks like SoFi, but the outside structure fits in with the architect of Washington, D.C. It looks like a monument. I think it'll be great and can't wait to get there as soon as I can.
Yeah, looking forward to going to check that out the year it opens, hopefully. But yeah, I was impressed with how much they made it fit the area, which, to your point, not a lot of places are doing anymore. I think everything is starting to look the same, even to the extent of like Buffalo's the one that looks the most different because it's not a dome. I mean, maybe that's the only reason it looks different, but it's not all that much different either. It almost just looks like a European soccer stadium.
Right. So. But yeah, I think it'll be good, and maybe I'll have to hit up. I don't think they're called FedEx Field anymore. One more time before. I don't think they're
missing much.
I don't think they are going to have the big ceremonious goodbye to the stadium as Highmark did this past year. Could be wrong, but I don't think so.
I don't think they will either. But it's kind of been a love-hate relationship with not only that stadium but that franchise for a while now. And I know we're not going to have that big hoorah, even more final game for Highmark Stadium, but will the Bills make the new stadium opening even more special? Why don't we break down the divisional round and see if we think Buffalo's going to keep getting through?
This is your playoff preview.
I totally forgot. That was so aggressive. I love it.
Shout out AI.
Like I mentioned, Bills at Broncos, first game on the docket for Saturday. I threw some spreads and over-unders on here for us. Buffalo, 1.5 point favorites, over-under at 45.5 for this game. Josh Allen, despite getting beat up, is fully participating and good to go. I know the Bills lost a couple of receivers to injury, but for the most part, both teams looking pretty healthy.
Yeah, I think this will be a good game. It'll be a fun game. I think the Broncos are going to win. I just think their defense is pretty good, and the Bills. I mean, it's like Brandon Cooks and Dalton Kincaid left. I guess Shakur is still there, but like they lost.
They still have Keon Coleman if you even want to count him. I know he's been a healthy scratch half the year.
Yeah, I guess the guys they didn't lose weren't like the frontline guys anyways at the wide receiver position, and we've been talking about their wide receivers all year long. But this Bills team goes, obviously Josh Allen is a big catalyst, but it's at its peak when James Cook is going, and I just don't know if James Cook can get going against this Broncos team. And I think this Broncos team likes to play, run the ball, keep away, and I think against this Bills defense that is pretty good against the pass, but not great against the run, I think they can, just chip away, make this a slow game. It'll probably be a low-scoring game to some extent. Like, I don't think it'll be a back-and-forth shootout like we saw in Jacksonville, Buffalo last week. And maybe then you only need one or two big plays from Josh Allen to pull off the upset. But I'm leaning Denver in this one.
I'm going to stick with my guns for my original bracket and stick with Buffalo in this one. And I think the reasons are, like, I think I'm a little bit more confident that James Cook can get going in this game. I know it's a tough sell against the Broncos defense, but I think the Bills are going to find a way, whether that is a lot of read option out of Josh Allen to keep him honest, get a guy out of the box, or just whatever else they can scheme up. But I think the other thing is, even though they've lost all these receivers, if Denver wants to stop them, I don't think the key is stopping like Brandon Cooks, Khalil Shakur. The X factor in the passing game, and we kind of forgot about him in the middle part of the year because he was out for a while, is Dalton Kincaid. He's been clutch when he's been on the field. So if he can get going like he had been, that's going to help them open up the run game as well. And I don't think you're going to need a whole lot like mass amount of big plays out of Josh Allen. You're just going to need enough.
Yeah, I mean, if I was picking based on quarterbacks, I'm taking the Bills, but I'm picking based on the other 10 guys or on the offense and the other and the defense. I think they both favor the Broncos, and the Broncos have been really good at home. I also think they had their humble loss when they lost to Jacksonville, but they were still able to get the 1 seed. I think they're going to come in. Like I said, I don't really like the Broncos. I hope the Bills would win. It would be better for me personally. I mean, I don't have too much rooting interest in either, but Mikey B was on last week, so maybe help him out a little bit. But yeah, it should be a good game and a great way to kick it off. But honestly, I'll be honest, and maybe I shouldn't say this, I'm not as excited for these games as I was last week. I don't think there's as many good ones.
No, there was a lot of good matchups last week, and I don't know, part of it could be that these 1 seeds have been very good, but they're not really the most intriguing teams.
Which you would think would make it a better game. Like,
you think
it'd be a closer game. Like, oh, who's going to win? Like, when the 1 seed is dominate, like you feel like, oh, there's no way they're definitely going or something like that. And obviously, I didn't think Commanders Lions was going to be a good game last year, and that was one heck of a game. So, how I feel going in does not mean the game is going to be bad. But all these games, there is just something about them that it's like, I'm not feeling it.
Bring perception about it too. Well, part of it, as much as we hate these like top end quarterbacks and like, Mahomes is there again. There's some sort of a storyline to it that like we can't stand Mahomes, but we will tune in to see Mahomes Allen 5. Like, we're not getting that because we don't have those guys in there. Same with Lamar, for example. You could even argue on the side of the ball, people don't like the Eagles being in there. But if you had like a Jalen Hurts versus some other top end quarterback, Jared Goff kind of deal, Matt Stafford, it'd be a more intriguing looking matchup.
not going to pretend that I didn't just hear you say, or you have a top end quarterback matchup, Jalen Hurts, Jared Goff. You did not.
Name
Calm down.
value, I got you. No, Matt Stafford was the better name. That's kind of who I was going for, and my brain said Jared Goff first. You're welcome. Yes, but you know what I'm saying. And then the other thing is, like, the big storyline coming into this playoffs was just like defense was dominating. And I mean, you and I, a fan of the game as much as anybody, can appreciate a good defensive game, but sometimes it's not the most intriguing thing to watch. How much did we care about 49ers at Seahawks finishing 13-3 a few weeks ago? And now here we are with 49ers Seahawks 3.
Yeah, and which everyone on the West Coast, obviously we're on the East Coast, is like, bruh, the 49ers Seahawks divisional third matchup. Look how excited you were for Bears Packers, excuse me, last week. And I hear you, but this game has the question. I mean, San Fran, all the injuries. I know they've been battling through, but they came in as 7-point underdogs. Now maybe that line will change because Sam Darnold might not play, but now I might have to watch Drew Lock play in a championship or in a divisional round game for a chance to go to the NFC Championship. Their defense is really good. I think the 7 points just goes to show how good the Seahawks defense is. I think the 49ers might struggle in this one. Maybe the Darnold, playing through injury helps them a little bit. But yeah, I think Seattle got this one too.
Yeah, I don't think the 49ers are going to be able to find the magic. Because it doesn't help how injured they've been. And I have to think CMC's got to have a limitation somewhere. He's been the big reason why they've been able to keep it rolling. But when he can't, like a few weeks ago in Seattle, you see the offense just sputters and flattens out. The Seahawks seem to have their number. The only thing that makes me question if I'm wrong here is that third game in a division, in a divisional matchup, the third matchup is literally a toss-up. So
well, they already
I'm
split.
still leaning Seattle. They already split, which I think actually favors towards Seattle more because normally the better team wins in that case. It's if they win two, the third one's harder.
Yeah, it's hard to beat a team 3 times is the saying. So,
Yeah.
which we don't have that here. And we talked about it on Monday, but like George Kittle was also a big piece of this offense. Obviously, he had missed some time, so they've overcome it. But now this is playing against one of the final 4 teams in the NFC for a chance to go to the NFC Championship. You don't have George Kittle. You don't have Fred Warner, was back to practice, but he's not going to be activated to play this week. You don't have Nick Bosa. The list goes on of the injuries of guys you don't have. And ultimately, I think that's what catches up with the 49ers. If they could, I will say, their linebackers played out of their mind last week against Philadelphia. If they can reharness that, maybe get a pick 6, maybe get a special teams play. I mean, heck, the 49ers, they beat the Packers, 3 years ago in the playoffs without scoring a touchdown on offense. So, like, if they could have a fluky game like that, which I hate to relive, but I wouldn't rule it out. But this one feels like the Seahawks game to lose more than anything.
It's true, especially if they end up having Drew Lock in their quarterback. Like, I could trust Sam Darnold to JSN to work 4 times in a game, and one of those is probably a touchdown. If you told me I have Drew Lock in there and you're relying a lot more on the running backs, Zach Charbonnet can run them into the ground.
Yeah.
The Seahawks meaning, not the 49ers.
I know what you meant.
Good. Just want to make sure everyone else out there knew, because I had to throw a jab at Zach Charbonnet. It's my favorite thing to do on the show.
And he does not give 2 ounces of care.
No, sir. Sunday slate, starting off with Texans at Patriots. We got Houston as a 3-point favorite, 40.5 on the over-under, and Texans more than likely without Nico Collins.
Yeah, because they have the short week, because they played on Monday, it's very hard to pass the concussion protocol in 6 days. And he also got carted off for a concussion. So, like, it was so I don't expect Nico. Obviously, he's not going to play. He might not even be back if they win this game the following week because of how bad it looked, and maybe he can't overcome it. This game, to me, really comes down to both of these defenses are good, but the Texans defense is way better. So how does Drake May do against that? Like they haven't beat anybody good, Well, this defense is very good. How do they do that? And then on the other side of the ball, how does CJ Stroud play? The dude fumbled 5 times against the Steelers. He didn't lose them all, but he fumbled 5 times. And they won by double digits. Like, that's not going to happen against the Patriots.
If that stat alone doesn't tell you how much the Steelers didn't belong to be in the playoffs, I don't know what we can do to convince you that.
I got
and
one
as
more.
much as go ahead first. You go.
Steelers offense scored 9 points.
That's
Texans
generous.
defense 6 points. I thought it was 9, but it was 6.
It was 6.
Texans defense scored 12 points.
Ooh.
Because they had 2 defensive touchdowns. So their defense scored more points than the offense. So
love that. That's great. But as much as we can try to argue that the Patriots are a year earlier, the Patriots don't deserve to be here, or the Patriots, whatever, like the Texans didn't give you the strongest showing to make you believe that they're a Super Bowl contender either. After that game was still close with Pittsburgh in the fourth quarter. The 2 defensive touchdowns came in the fourth quarter. Like, so you can't forget that either. It was a 16-6 game, I want to say 13-6 game, something like that in the fourth quarter. So, yeah. So
it felt like I was gonna say it felt like one of those games that like the Texans dominated, but they played with their food too much, and then Rodgers was going to get one drive together, and they were going to get the victory. And it didn't.
And then the Texans defense was opportunistic.
Yeah, and I think we sleep on the Texans a lot, but I do have to give a shout out to this is CJ Stroud, DeMeco Ryans' 3rd year, and they've made the Final 4 AFC teams every year they've been together, which we don't think about that with the Texans, but like that's elite level stuff.
It is, honestly. They've been a successful pairing so far. And the X factor is literally going to come down to, like, we talk about how good this Patriots defense is. We can argue their strength of schedule wasn't great. They actually haven't had some of the better defensive games against some of the top end teams like Buffalo. They've still gone up 28, 30 points. But the Texans being down Nico Collins is a big deal. Their running game has been hit or miss. Woody Marks looked great against Pittsburgh. They're really going to need that in this game. And then, like, who's going to step up at receiver? We've been thinking it was going to be Jaden Higgins most of the year. And then Christian Kirk came out of nowhere last week and showed that he was still on the team. So, like, if they can get a vintage Christian Kirk game, that might be the difference.
I mean, I don't sleep on like Jaden Higgins either. He's had a quietly really good rookie year. He hasn't had the high end numbers, but he's been a reliable target as well. And I think he could be a guy that steps up in a big way too.
And I think all that being said, and I keep trying to convince myself to pick Texans, I think I'm still going Patriots in this game, though.
I'm going Texans. That defense is too good.
Taking the Texans defense over the Patriots defense.
Yeah, they're on different levels of good.
And that's crazy because if you even talked about this 4 weeks ago, I feel like people would be like, Patriots defense is best in the league. And I don't know if they're really quite that good.
Yeah, they're not
bad by any means.
No, they're not bad, but they're more middle of the tier. They have some good moments. Obviously, they had like 6 sacks against the Chargers, but everybody sacks. I think the Giants had 8 sacks against the Chargers. Like, I'm not like they're good. And I think they can slow down the offense of the Texans, but I don't know if they're going to be able to score on the Texans. Like the over under in this game is 40 and a half. Seems high.
Yeah, because you're saying that's 21-20. I could see this ending 16-13.
Yeah.
Feels like a good number to me.
So I'll take Houston in the points in this one.
Okay. And then one more game on the slate. Rams at Bears. Bears, yet again, a home underdog, 3.5 points to the Rams, over under 48.5 on this one. I mean, this line probably makes more sense to go this way than it did last week when they were home underdogs to the Packers, but the Packers still, showed why they were favorites. They just couldn't finish the deal.
I mean, home underdogs to a team, they won, but they also had a double-digit lead in the fourth quarter. So, or they blew a double-digit lead in the fourth quarter.
Yeah,
So it seemed like the
exactly.
line was trending in the right direction, but Chicago
The
came back.
line was right to a sense.
Yes. And I think this game is going to be very similar. Like, I think the Rams can dominate, so to speak. I also think that the Bears aren't going to be out of it until the very end. So this is my favorite matchup of the week. Not that I think it's the two best teams. I just think the Bears are so scrappy. The Rams are very good. I'm excited for that. It's going to be outside. I know there's, people are worried. I've heard, well, this is why they're going to lose because Matt Stafford is a California boy now. Bro, he almost beat the Eagles in the snow last year. I don't care about his weather ability, but I just think at the end of the day, the offensive pieces of the Rams can take advantage of the Bears defense. They are very susceptible to giving up plays in the passing game. And we saw that early in the first half against Green Bay, and we saw that again in the fourth quarter. They had that stretch in the third where they brought up a lot of blitzes and were able to disrupt things, and the Packers offensive line played awful. You can't play much worse awful offensive line than the Green Bay Packers did in the third quarter of that game. And so I like the Rams in this one. People are going to say I'm a hater. I don't care. The Rams should win, and I believe they will.
In my eyes, there's essentially, and I mean, I was corrected on TikTok, there was a third option here, that Bears beating the Eagles most of the way through the game, sure. But there's essentially two formulas to a normal Bears game. And it's what happened last week against the Packers. They go down, they come back in the fourth quarter, and they take the lead late and win. Or it's like that Bears 49ers game, that primetime game from a few weeks ago, where it's high scoring seesaw kind of game. And, comes down to basically who has the ball last. I feel like this game has a lot more making to be that kind of game than it does a Bears coming back late, because I think the Rams do a pretty good job of putting games away. They've done it most of the season. It's very rare that they have somebody come back on them in the fourth quarter. So I think if we're in that situation, it might be RIP to the Bears. I don't know if the Rams would blow that. But even if we're going to talk weather scenario, maybe it brings the scoring down a little bit. The Rams aren't just a pass-first team. Matt Stafford's potential MVP, and they have two stud wide receivers and a lot of good tight ends. But, that two-headed monster they have at running back is good, too. And most of the year, the Bears have been fairly susceptible to the run. So I think the Rams have a chance to beat them in multiple ways, which is why I'm going to lean to the Rams here, but it's going to be a close game.
Yeah, I think it'll be close to some extent. Like, this game, to me, feels a little bit, and then maybe this is being a little bit of a hater. Like, this to me feels like a game that might be final score 28-24 that was 28-10, then hits 28-17, and then with a couple seconds left hits 28-24. Like, you see the comeback start, we just don't get all the way. And the score is a little bit closer than the game would be, which would fit the Bears' MO. Now, I've been pretty negative on the Bears, and George won't clip this part because he's just going to clip the last part. But people on TikTok should listen to the whole show. If the Bears want to win, I think they need to look at the Panthers game, the first one, not the last one. I mean, even though that one was a close game, and the Falcons game. Now, I don't think DeAndre Swift or Kyle Monungai is going to take 280-yard-ish big plays from like Bijan Robinson like we got, but they were able to run the ball, move the ball, and get explosive plays. They got to find a way to get those explosives, because without those explosives, and you can say that with any team that has explosive plays like that, they probably don't lose to the Falcons. They probably don't. And the explosives were more evident in the Falcons game. So that would be the game. And that was just a couple weeks ago. So that would be the game I would go look at. Get those running backs involved early, play to the strength of the cold weather. You are an outdoor NFC North team for now until you decide to build a dome somewhere else in Indiana. But the play to your strengths, run the ball. Don't get too cute, Ben Johnson. Don't do I feel like there's always the, triple reverse pass screen play. I fake handoff to the end around, and that just gets blown up Like, just you're a really good offensive play caller. Run your stuff, run the ball, and you have a legit shot. I don't think you're going to do it, but I think there is. Like, the Bears, I'm not going to finish that.
Do the Bears have the wide receiver talent to get it done? I think is what it's going to come down to me. Because I think one place you can get to the Rams defense is by attacking their corners. That's probably the weakest part of their defense. But I don't know, like, Odunze's fallen off since the beginning of the year. DJ Moore's coming in clutch situations, but it's hard for me to say he's been consistent all year. So they're going to need to find a way to be able to expose on the outside.
Yeah, and I also think Colson Loveland, his breakout over the second half of the season and his 10 catches for 100 and some yards on Sunday, like, that was a big reason for their comeback. They got him going. So that would be the big X factor for me in Chicago.
But we're both picking Rams?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We'll see how we do this weekend. I think it's going to be a great slate of games. Yeah.
I guess that means we're at the end of the rundown. I was used to something else. I was used to more games to talk about. There isn't.
No, I mean, think about it here. 4 this week, 2 next week, 1 after. We're down to 7 games left in the NFL slate this year. It went so fast.
It did. We'll be mock drafting in 3 weeks.
Yeah, we will.
So, but alrighty. I guess that means for me to hit some buttons for us to get out of here. Any fun plans for this weekend? Watching these games where I find that this is me stalling to find my button.
I mean, watching the Saturday games on an airplane, so we're going to see how airplane Wi-Fi has progressed over the years and see how I can stream, or if I just have to, like, watch the text on the ESPN app or something.
Oh, at least the Chargers aren't playing. You wouldn't miss your favorite team.
Get out of here.
All right. That's my cue to hit the button. Out of here. This has been another episode of 30 p.m. Eastern, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, throughout the rest of the NFL season. Make sure you follow us on social media, Facebook, TikTok, X, Twitch, Instagram, all those good places at the Couch GMs. I'm Cody Roadcap. That's George Kurth. We'll be back next week breaking down all these playoff games. See you then.